People were just drawn to this region by the great resources that were here. The same kind of things that cause people to migrate today. They migrate to where the opportunities are that they see that will fill the needs of their families.
By and large, the majority of the people that settled this area were from Scotland, Ireland, and Germany. The climate and the terrain and the geography and the whole look of the place was so like where they had come from. And I think that's one of the reasons why they settled here, to tell you the truth. And they brought with them their traditions of material culture.
The Germans came through and who had been more farmers than anything else and looked at the river bottoms and thought, ah, here's great farmland. The Ulster Scots came through and looked at it and looked at the hillsides and thought of home and sheep and what they were used to. So if people came in and remembered where they were from, then a lot of times they would settle in something that was familiar to them.
I think one of the other things too, that's why the mountains have such a hold on us who were born here, is because our ancestors who came to this country, they never owned land. They never had anything that was theirs. Even though it's rough living, even though it's tough times sometimes, it was theirs. The place that they could call home, the place that they could raise a family, a place that they could build a church and worship as they pleased, a place where they could have neighbors that they could depend on in times of crisis.
People migrating west had, three modes of transportation. They had wagons, horses, and their legs. In 1775, you could get wagons perhaps as far as Fort Patrick, Henry, but getting wagons beyond that point was impossible. And even, 2 or 3 or 4 horses would be difficult. So people brought with them the very minimal items for their migration. And these stations, or blockhouses, or homes, became very important waypoints. And they might camp around the blockhouse for a week or more. And what they were doing was waiting for more folks to come, so there would be a fairly large body of people heading west, safety in numbers.
Everything you took with you was carried either on your back or on horseback. So the common things that you would see a family carry through, of course, would be firearms and food. See corn, beans, squash, pumpkins. That's why you see most of the people traveling in the winter, because they had to get there and get ready to get their crops in the spring.
From the earliest times, the earliest settlement times until present day, people have had to make what they could not buy themselves, whether it was available or whether they had the financial means. So when the first settlers come, certainly the first people there were wainwrights and housewrights and people that could build structures for people to live in, people that could build agricultural equipment that they could farm with. Because if you think about the space in the big Conestoga wagons, there was only a certain amount of space. And if you were moving your entire family, what did you bring? And there were a lot of things that you could not bring with you, and there were precious things that you did. So whenever people went in an area to settle, the first thing they built was a house, something to live in, and then next was something for the livestock. But actually, if they traveled early in the spring, a lot of them would live under the wagons or in tents until they got a garden in, because that was the main thing for a food source for the fall and winter. After the garden was in, they'd build a house, and then they'd build shelters for their animals.
William Ingalls was an entrepreneur and had a lot to do with creating Ingalls Ferry here, and he had his hands in a lot of different things, to include being an official in the counties. The ferry was very significant because it provided a service, and it was also a community like here. that provided things that they needed, because this was a jumping off place. It wasn't much west of here when it started in the 1760s. This became a great migration route. It's like the interstate of the day. It had commerce on it, but it also was a lot of movement of people going from the Virginia through the Cumberland Gap of southwestern Virginia all the way into Kentucky. So there was a lot of movement.
Transportation is really the key. Abingdon was located on the Great Road, the Great Philadelphia Wagon Road that started in Philadelphia on Market Street and came through the Valley of Virginia from Winchester on down. By the time it got out here, it was usually referred to just as the Great Road. The settlers and the artisans who followed them were able to utilize the beautiful natural resources that are here and very abundant resources that were here to create the products that they needed, and then to get them out, to get them back on the wagons going back up the valley north or even further south.
We know that by the 1760s, from one store account in Dublin, Virginia, that the store already had 17 types of British fabrics. They were selling British queensware and elfware. They were selling toothbrushes. As soon as people settled in an area, there was someone there with the store and supplying goods, and those goods were either coming out from the Richmond area or coming down from Baltimore or Philadelphia. So people were always there with goods to sell.